Yeah, it's what is the created EMS. The person was involved so anything changes after they will get the creative refinement. Anything YouTube screen, I just to know what is going on. Sir, link na. Sir. Sir, no. Sir, Anna. Is it the sir means no one can take it to sir. We don't want to take it. You can give the sir the link this meeting. History even we check right now. I think the link open.
So what would have been you say?
Who's doing the link? They're saying it's cutting all the time. Link is cutting out all the time.
Give your mail to me, sir.
The group of the UK is saying
New link.
new link only. It's another link. Third link.
Share that link, sir.
Tony gave me this two links. He said ignore the first and gave me a second link.
Just share that new ID. Just there in it is there. Share to your phone number, no? Your mail, no?
Let's see the link I got. This is the link. See, this is the link he gave me. Is that correct? Yeah, 944.
Ma'am, can you tell me your mail ID?
Mail. Maya Mayrada. M-A-Y-A. M-Y-R-A-D-A. D-A. Maya Mayrada at gmail.com.
Nothing, ma'am.
No. Maya Mayrada.
M-Y-R-A-D-A.
Yeah.
At
gmail.com. You send a new link. I sent to my mail, no?
I got it. He's very upset. What happened? It's working. It's working for us. No, please send one more mail. One more. They see how to make it cooler. Everybody is making it cooler. Everybody is walking and coming. They're all gone around. You know, you make it cooler? Yeah. No, no, no. Yeah. Which one? No problem. I need to open. Kim. Gmail only, na? Open the coming bus. Now we see here is now the now it's showing that time now showing
Oh, okay, you're sitting there.
no, I You know how to submit. Yeah.
Before we start the oration, there are some merchandise outside, which from the director's office, that are a lot of memories and little souvenirs of St. John's. So you can look at it when you go out. And soon after the oration, we will break for tea. Just you go out of this door and to the right, and then come back in here for the annual general body meeting of the Alumni Association, which will take place in this hall itself. So in a couple of minutes, we are ready to start the oration. We can settle down. And also, just a little announcement. Thank you to, I must thank Dr. Uma Murthy of 1968 batch for that. That originally, August was always the HJ Mehta Memorial Oration, but this time we were really thrilled because Jayashree's classmates, the 1968 batch, were going to come here for their reunion, and we thought, when Uma suggested it, we thought it was a fantastic suggestion that we have Jayashree Thomas Memorial Oration when they are here. So we're really, really happy to have the 1968 batch. If you can lift your hands up. So for you, I'm sure this will be an even more special oration, remembering Jayashree.
Good afternoon, one and all. Any gathering comes alive when we have a right started. Now, let's join together for a small prayer. God, the giver of life, we thank you for this auspicious day. You have brought us here to recall the goodness of Dr. Jayashree Thomas and enrich ourselves with the oration that we are going to begin now. Thank you for our alma mater, St. John's Academy, which provides opportunity to grow. Lord, grant eternal rest to the departed soul of Dr. Jayashree. Bless her family members and be gracious to all of our friends and colleagues. Lord, shower your blessings on all the golden and silver jubilees who are with us today and others who couldn't make it. May they find true contentment and joy in the service they render. Lord, bless Dr. Dilip Lobo as he is going to deliver the oration. Be with us all and may this oration inspire us and enable us to work for your glory and for the people we serve, so that the motto of our institution, "He shall live because of me," will come true in our lives. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Once again, wish you all good afternoon, and I'm privileged to welcome you all to this August gathering. I am glad to welcome Dr. George D'Souza, the Dean of St. John's Medical College, Dr. Tony Raj, the Dean of St. John's Research Institute, and Dr. Sanjeev Levin, the Chief of Medical Services. Welcome, dear doctors. We are also delighted to have our own Dr. Dilip Lobo in our midst, a well-experienced and eminent personalities with us today. We are extremely glad to have him as a speaker of this esteemed oration. A hearty welcome to you, sir. A cordial welcome to you, Dr. M.G. Thomas and Dr. Maya Thomas. We are honored to have you with us this afternoon. I accord a joyous welcome to the heads of all the departments faculty and students of the St. John's Academy, the alumni of the St. John's Medical College, and jubilarians and all the students. Welcome you all. Great things happen when great minds come together. Yes, it is with great anticipation that we welcome all of you for this forum. Hope you will enjoy this oration and go back inspired. Welcome one and all, and wish you a fruitful time. Now I call upon Dr. Uma Modi, who is the batchmate and friend of Dr. Jayashree. She will introduce Dr. Jayashree Thomas to this honors gathering.
We are here today for the Jayashree Thomas Memorial Oration. I am on the batch of 1968. Batch of 1968. It is our 50th anniversary of joining St. John's, and Jayashree Thomas was our good friend and classmate. It is my honor on behalf of all my batchmates and joy to remember Jayashree as we knew her. And to those of you who know her but don't know her personally, I hope in the next few slides I can convey some glimpses of her personality and what we did. What can one say about a 30-year-old girl who died? That she was bright and beautiful, that she loved her family and friends, that she was devoted and dedicated to the art and science of medicine and teaching. Alas, her short life was like a blazing star across the skies. Jayashree Thomas had academic achievements that are very evident on this slide. She was first in anatomy, forensic medicine, and obstetrics and gynecology, and was voted the best outgoing student of that batch. She was also first among the women students at that MBBS exam from Bangalore University, winning the President's Silver Medal. As soon as she finished her internship, she had decided she wanted to do pathology. And I think it was for about 6 months, both of us, Jayashree and I, were with Dr. John Thomas as, I don't know what the position was called. It was made, the position was made for us. Her very first paper that she wrote from that experience on fallopian tube morphology and normal and abnormal menstrual cycles won her the Louis Montero Prize for the best paper that year. Her humility, despite all her academic achievements, and the unassuming personality was unchanged over the years. This is Jayashree receiving the Pope Paul Prize and medal. Jayashree loved her family and friends. This is Jayashree standing between her mother and father, Mr. and Mrs. Nair, and to her right is her sister Jayanti and her brother Jayaprakash with a baby in hand and his wife sitting in front of him. To her left is, of course, M.J. Thomas, who had been courting her, I suspect, from the first day in medical school. When I show this picture of Jayashree with her family, I'm reminded of her courage. And I recall what I'm not sure very many of even her close friends are aware of. Shortly after medical school, I think it was during the internship year, Jayanti, her sister, who's next to her in this picture, took ill in Calicut with typhoid fever and did not do well. And she was, it was a long illness, and Jayashree strongly suspected that she may have, when she went to see her, perforated ileal ulcerations. The courage of Jayashree on her own to put her younger sister into a train compartment with IVs hanging, running IV fluids and antibiotic all the way to Vellore. She took her from Calicut to Vellore in the train, and Jayashree is well, alive today with children and doing what she does the best because of this act of courage. Oftentimes, I've thought to myself, given such a situation, I don't know that I would have that courage to do what Jayashree did on that occasion. In 1975, Jayashree and MJ were married. I am sure that this was a long courtship, as subsequent slides will allude to. Jayashree's legacy is Rohit, her son, MJ and her son, and Rohit at 9 months, and today he is a handsome, dynamic pilot. With all of us who were her friends, Jayashree, this is the first year that we joined St. John's, and some of us are here today and will recognize yourself. Jayashree was ready. If we said, let's do something, she'd say, what? She was ready for any fun activities that we could organize or dream of. I recall one Christmas Eve, it was cold. It used to be cold in Bangalore in 1968. From Koramanga, from the hostel, a number of us, I think there were nuns, girls, and there were boys as well, we walked all the way to Shivaji Nagar to attend midnight mass given by the Archbishop Parokiswamy at that time. We were looking forward to being there, and the mass was long, and it was entirely in Tamil, which most of us didn't understand. Nevertheless, we happily walked back in the cold, and in the dining room of the mess hall, we had cakes and wine, the same dining room where we had breakfast today. I put up this picture to illustrate a couple of other points about the friendship we had with Jayashree. We lived in C block in those days. The girls and the nuns resided in C block. And I had that Vicky moped. And Jayashree would reluctantly come sometimes on that Vicky moped with me. But she was always interested in taking much more exciting and fast rides on MJ's motorcycle. This is the whole class of 1968. And for those of us who are here, I can say that we thought we were the best batch until then. To the chagrin of the 1966 batch, who were always our arch enemies in everything that happened in St. John's, whether it was an athletic meet or it was something, or if it was a competition and elocution or debate or anything. So that year, this was just before graduation, just to point out that the nuns and the girls and this batch, in addition to being pretty aggressive on the course, could still dress up and do party things as well. Now, Jayashree was dedicated to the art and science of medicine and teaching. She was the first alumnus of St. John's to come back to the institution and be a teacher here as assistant professor in 1981. And Dr. John Thomas recalls that it was with excitement and thrill of going to Vellore to do pathology and to come back to be faculty here. And she set up with Dr. John Thomas a small but very cohesive unit in the pathology department. And to quote Dr. John Thomas, she was an exemplary undergraduate student, a pleasant, reliable, and affectionate colleague, and a perceptive, deeply introspective research worker. She was greatly interested in the newer teaching methods in pathology. But her life was brief. Her intent when she came back from Vellore was to foster closer relations between St. John's, her parent alumnus, and the Christian Medical College at Vellore, which was her postgraduate alumnus. She envisioned that such a relationship would be
Lovely bond between you and Dr. Jayashree. Ma'am, thank you very much for the moving testimony. Dr. Uma, I request you now to accept a gift from us from the Alumni Association. Now let's welcome Dr. John Stephen to introduce our orator for this evening, Dr. Dilip Lobo. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. It is a privilege and honor to introduce today's speaker for this year's Jayashree Memorial oration, Dr. Dilip Lobo. And I wrote to him and asked him for a CV, and he sent me a brief. It's just about 22 pages, so sit back and relax, okay? He told me that it would take another week to send me the actual CV. So I'm going with what he sent me at 22 pages. Yeah. So where do I start? And the first thing is about, I thought I should briefly tell about the MBBS days. Yeah. And if I were to speak about the MBBS days, I can talk about academics, extracurricular, and others. My classmates told me to focus only on the others, but I keep that for the evening. But I'm sure, as far as academics is concerned, I'm sure all of them in each of the batches we have these people now who get all of the first ranks and the second ranks always in every college. They are the ones on this page always, and I mean that was brilliant. Okay. He excelled in every year, not just in our St. John's Medical College, but also university level. And I think they were always there on the top, academically brilliant, all years. Extracurricular, of course, I mean, involved in a lot of extracurricular activities as well. And tried innovation there as well. I remember the 20 questions and how it got changed, and the dumb shares and how they managed to win many of them with so many of those innovations. We'll talk about it in the evening. And so even the MBBS days, I mean, I think even in the first year, two of them took up a research project to breed hamsters in physiology under Dr. Shetty. And so he had a brilliant stint at St. John's in undergraduate. His training as a surgeon, of course, started at PGI Chandigarh and later at Nottingham and Leicester. He was awarded a DM degree with distinction by the University of Nottingham. Dilip Lobo is presently Professor of Gastrointestinal Surgery at the University of Nottingham and consultant hepatopancreatobiliary surgeon at the Queen's Medical Centre, Nottingham, UK. And he's used to this at both St. John's and Chandigarh. Again, in UK, he's received many awards. I'm going to name a few. Sir David Cutterburston Medal for his contributions to the field of nutrition and metabolism, the prestigious James Ford Society of Surgeons Travelers Award, and the Moynihan Fellowship. His clinical interests focus primarily on surgery of the liver, pancreas, biliary, laparoscopic surgery. His research interests include surgical nutrition and metabolism, fluid and electrolyte balance, and pancreatic cancer. Dilip is the local special interest group lead in surgery for UK Comprehensive Clinical Research Network. He's also the surgical lead for the Nottingham Digestive Disease Center, NIHR Biomedical Research Unit. And of course, he's been a member and an editor of many journals. For example, the associate editor of the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition from 2007 to 2011, member of the editorial World Journal of Surgery, the World Journal of Gastroenterology and Clinical Sciences. He has over 330 publications in peer-reviewed journals and has lectured both nationally and internationally. He's been awarded a fellowship for the American College of Surgeons in 2010 and is a member of the scientific committee of the European Society of Clinical Nutrition and Metabolism, the Association of Surgeons of Great Britain and Ireland, and the International Society of Surgeons of Metabolism and Nutrition. I can go on, and I've got some more. But I think we are indeed really privileged to have Dr. Dilip Lobo to deliver the oration today at this year's Jayashree Memorial oration. So, I want to present Dr. Dilip.
It is difficult to do this job to introduce the orator, but sir, you have done a brilliant job. Now I request to accept this small gift as a token of love from Alumni Association.
Thank you, John, for that very kind, albeit slightly exaggerated introduction. I wish my parents were here today, because my father would have been proud, and my mother may have even believed you. So it is a singular honor, double pleasure, triple. I better stop there. Privilege for me to come and deliver the 27th Jayashree Thomas oration. I do thank my aspirant sister Amita and the Alumni Association for bestowing this honor upon me. Now, you've already heard about the qualities of Jayashree Thomas, and I'm not going to say very much more about it. But she and I had a common role model, Professor John Arthur Thomas. And when he heard that I was going to deliver the lecture, he sent me this very brief message. And when I read it the first time, I was absolutely thrilled to get such a message from Professor John Thomas. And then I read it again, because knowing his laconic style, I was sure there would be a hidden meaning. And then I realized that I was not as good as Jayashree Thomas, because I was one of his best and she was one of his very best. And he also put a lot of pressure on me to do well and do him proud. So I do hope I live up to his expectations. Now, this is a matter of routine. These are my declarations of interest. And this oration is going to be a very personal journey involving me and some of the people sitting in this audience. So do indulge me, and if you get bored, you can fall asleep. I'm going to summarize some of the work that we've done over the last 20 years, a very small snapshot of that work, and how it was validated by other researchers. And basically, we're going to concentrate on the problem with 0.9% saline, or as I prefer to call it, abnormal saline, and the utility of near zero fluid balance in managing perioperative patients. But today, August the 2nd, is 37 years to the very day when the batch of 1982 started medical studies at St. John's. And as most of us are heading towards becoming patients, I would like to dedicate this lecture to the batch of 1982. And interestingly, we've got 6 professors from the batch who are currently working at St. John's. And you may or may not recognize some of them, but I think none of them who are working here have changed at all. We've changed, we've become older, but we still have young as they used to be 37 years ago. Now, they say the undergraduate years are the best years of a medical student's life, and I totally agree with that. And we had a great time at St. John's. In second MBBS, we virtually invented T20 cricket because we'd come back in the afternoon and play with a table leg and a tennis ball and pockets of wickets. We enjoyed ourselves all round. We partied, we studied, and we played. Now, we weren't very good at sports when we first joined, and Ophelia very famously tried to score an own basket, which would have been the world first. But we gradually improved, and when we reached third MBBS, we won all the competitions within the college, and we were the overall champions. And over here you can see the current medical superintendent, even at that time, thought that he was number one. Arvind Shishak, I don't know if you're here in the audience, but he, David Francis, Ganesh Kudo, and I were a quiz team, and we won almost every competition that there was to win. And we really had a good time. And you may wonder what that hamster is doing up there in the corner, and John has given you a bit of a hint. And when I was a medical student, David D'Souza and I went up to Prakash Shetty, Patrick Kamatana, and said, we want a research project. So they gave us this project to get hamsters and try and develop gallstones in them and then try and prevent the gallstones. So we did all this very religiously, and when we sacrificed the hamsters, we found no gallstones at all. And we were very disappointed. But then I realized that was what research is, and I did get some positives after this project. I learned how to breed hamsters, and I also learned that hamsters cannibalize their young. Now, we had some of the most intelligent and most good-looking girls in our batch, and fortunately or unfortunately, they paid no attention to me for the first 1.5 years. And then in second MBBS, this girl over here showed some interest in me, and we got married soon after internship, and it's 30 years now. So after St. John's, I went over to PGI, and I've never worked as hard in my life as I have over there. It started about 6:30 in the morning, and a good day finished at 10 at night. But that training really grounded me, and I owe a lot of my clinical acumen to what I learned in PGI. And then I moved over to Nottingham. The chart on the top left is the reason why there are no rich people left in Nottingham. We've got Knox County football ground north of the River Trent, Nottingham Forest south of the River Trent, and that's the Trent Bridge cricket ground. This is where I work, Queen's Medical Centre, and the University of Nottingham is across the road, and that's the Vice Chancellor's building at the University of Nottingham. I'd like now to spend a few minutes talking about serendipity and mentorship in the development of surgery. When I was a student, I always had a medical bent of mind, if you understand what that means. I did very little dissection, and then under the guidance of Professors Prakash Shetty, Tangam Joseph, and Rajni McCann, two of them were over here, I liked the medically oriented subjects very much. I liked physiology, pathology, microbiology, and pharmacology. And I always thought I was going to be a physician. And then when I was doing internship, I don't know whether you recognize the person over here. That's the best photo I could find. His head is down. He's Rajkumar Shah. And he was an assistant professor at that time. And as the intern, I was his first assistant. And all I did was I took out the Donald clamp with my left hand. And he said, oh, that's quite good. I don't know whether he meant it or not. But he said, have you considered a career in surgery? And a very small incident changed my mind. And I said, yes, I will be a surgeon. And then I went over to PGI, and this is the group of residents and faculty when we were there. And Satish Khanna, who trained on the Seymour Shorts, was the head of the department, and I learned the science of surgery from him. Sashank Bose was the one who taught me the art of surgery, and Gurpreet Singh is the person with whom I wrote my first paper. And then I went to Nottingham with the view of working there for about 3 or 4 years and coming back to India. But as luck would have it, I met these two people, Brian Rowlands and Simon Allison, were two giants in the field of surgery and nutrition. And I got together with them, and we did several projects. I got my DM, and I largely owe my being today to what they did for me. So the question is, why should a surgeon do research? Well, everyone who does research wants to win the Nobel Prize. But if you're a surgeon, you're very unlikely to win it. Because in the whole history of the Nobel Prize, there are only 10 people who won it. And one of them was a gynecologist, and another one a urologist. So my claim to fame is that I got a write-up in the Guardian higher education supplement, where the person who awards the Ig Nobel Prize, and we wrote a case report about a boy who came to harm by eating a whole pizza and drinking 4 pints of beer. And that is my only claim to fame. But the real reason a surgeon should do research is to help mankind. This is what most of us said when we came for the interview to St. John's. But we've got to try and advance knowledge and improve patient care. Our own academic advancement is very important, and research is satisfying and fun. And being surgeons, we're curious, we've got an exploratory nature, and we are competitive. Research helps us establish collaborations and make friends, and in my own personal experience, I've made friends all over the world, and we collaborate, do work together, and write papers together. You become an expert, and an expert is one who knows everything about nothing, and you also get recognition, both nationally and internationally. And you get invited back to your institution to give a talk like this in front of a very august audience. There are many obstacles to surgical research, and they include money, or more importantly, lack of money, time, discrimination, the surgical persona, because we want results yesterday and not tomorrow. And there's also lack of equipoise among surgeons, because they think what they do is the best, and what anyone else is trying to prove is a waste of time. And so they don't want to enter patients into clinical trials or experimental research. And there are clinical pressures as well, because you don't want to be a non-operating professor of surgery. You've got patients, and the patient has a complication. You've got to go and deal with that. You can't say, today's my protected research time, and I'm not going to see my patient. And the academic surgeon is drawn into several different directions, and each one wants their pound of flesh, sometimes even more than a pound of flesh. You've got to provide a clinical service, conduct relevant research, ensure the organization and delivery of the undergraduate and even the postgraduate curriculum, provide academic leadership to the organization, and also contribute to postgraduate training. And this is often very difficult because you only have 24 hours in a day, and you've got to sleep for at least 6 hours, or 8 if you believe the current literature. You want to foster your own well-being. And that's the reason why surgical research gets criticized. And this is an editorial written by Richard Horton in The Lancet in 1996, where he said that surgical research is almost like a comic opera, and surgeons should collaborate with other specialists in order to improve the quality of surgical research and not just publish case series and case reports. Sir Peter Meadow, who will be familiar to most of you, had some rules for successful research. And he said, you've got to have luck, and don't overlook the unexpected finding. You've got to follow unexpected findings with definitive experiments and try and prove or disprove them. Resist any temptation to manipulate data. And although you may think your findings are original, they're often built on other people's work, and therefore you should have a good idea of the history of whatever you're doing and a good grasp of the literature published before you start it. And he also said that the scientific paper is a fraud. And you may wonder why this is so. And there's a video going around on the internet, on YouTube, where 5 Nobel laureates talk about publication. And they say that all of us, when we have a piece of work ready for publication, we want it to be published in the best possible journal. So we send it to Nature, the New England, or the Lancet, and there the reviewers tear your paper to shreds. But you still want to publish in that journal, so you went backwards to respond to the reviewer's comments, and what's published bears very little resemblance to the original manuscript that you sent. So Barber's rules, which are largely for mentorship, and I've modified them slightly. You've got to pick a good mentor, work with a partner and collaborate, enjoy the competition, don't be afraid of competition, because competition is what drives you forward. Be lucky, and devote just as much effort to presenting your work as to doing it, because people are not going to read your whole paper. You've got to write that abstract properly. When you present it at a conference, you've got to hold their attention and let them ask you questions. Because the worst thing you can do is go to a conference, speak for 10 minutes, and then everyone says no questions. And have a plan B, because if things go wrong, you've got to find something else to do. And this is what happened in my own life. When I was doing my DM, we had funding for a certain project. I came to the lab on Monday morning and found that the cleaner turned off the freezer on the Friday night, and we were left with a pool of water inside the freezer. The blood samples of 120 patients were destroyed. But that led me to do the plan B, and I'm really grateful for that cleaner. I don't know her name, but she helped me on plan B, and I did much more exciting research. Academic training, for those of you who are medical students and residents, you must realize it's exciting, but it's not for everyone. Only do it if you're really interested. It helps you gain insight into yourself. You should try and get a higher degree, and that usually results from the production of a thesis. Use your own ideas and time. Just don't blindly follow what your supervisor asks you to do, because you need some intellectual ownership of your project. Work with experts in their field, and you also learn academic skills like critical appraisal, review of literature, statistics. And there are transferable skills such as time management, money and team management, public speaking, and collaboration. And you've got to identify areas for future research, because your research career doesn't end with the award of the MD or the PhD. So for those of us in the UK, measures of academic success are very important. This is what the university gets national funding for. And so they look at your grant income. The number of papers you write is not so important, but the quality of papers you write is very important. And that's dependent on the impact factor of the journal, the number of citations, and the Hirsch index. They're also now looking at the impact your work has had on the societal aspects of care, so that's health economics, patient well-being, and reduction of complications. There are several other esteem indicators as to what you do in national committees or international committees, and how many of your students have completed their higher degrees. And now what's getting more important is feedback from medical students, whether you're a good teacher or not. And I have to go on a course service and teach a certificate to prove that I can teach. Now for the output, you've got to be honest, you've got to maintain your logbooks meticulously, and enter the data as soon as you generate them. Don't wait for a week or 2 weeks, because then you may lose that data. And do not ever manipulate your data. Interpret your results accurately, and don't try and over-interpret them. Write and rewrite your abstract, and probably get someone else to read that as well. Because when you submit a paper, the editor doesn't read your own paper before you send it out to review. He usually reads the abstract, and the abstract attracts his attention, it goes for review. Practice before you present, and convert the abstract into a peer-reviewed publication. And once your paper is published, if it's really very good, they'll send it to someone who knows half as much as you on the topic to write an editorial. And then that leads to further enhancement of your paper. So before you start a publication, you must agree on certain terms. You must decide who's going to be an author and who's going to be a contributor. You must get all the permissions and signatures. Read and reread your paper, because very often there are typographical mistakes. There may be factual errors, and those really irritate the editors and the reviewers. Avoid plagiarism, including self-plagiarism. Check for errors. Do not offer anyone gift authorship, nor should you try to get gift authorship, because if the paper is plagiarized or a fraudulent paper, everyone sinks with that. Choose your journal appropriately. So you've written something on an animal experiment, don't send it to a journal that does not publish animal studies. Check the publication costs, because most journals nowadays charge you a fee for open access. If the editor asks you to revise the paper, revise it promptly. And once it's accepted, have a glass of champagne. And there are several reasons why papers are rejected, and most often they do not address an important enough issue, they're not original, they do not try and prove or disprove the author's hypothesis, and a different type of study should have been done. So something like randomized trial should have done a cohort study, or vice versa. The sample size is usually too small, it's not calculated at all. There are no controls in the study, the statistical analysis is incorrect or inappropriate, and the conclusions are not justified from the data. And the thing that I said earlier that irritates editors the most is poor language and poor expression of thoughts. You should try and get that done properly. I'd just like to emphasize this, which I learned when I was at the Mayo Clinic, and they have this mantra where the patient is the center of all activity, be it clinical activity or research activity. And you've got to collaborate, innovate, and more importantly, celebrate. So if you get a paper published, you get a big grant, throw a party, go to Maliwala and have a drink. But do celebrate it and take your colleagues along with you. So now I'm going to briefly talk about my own odyssey in research. And my interest in fluid and electrolyte balance came when I read these two papers. One was the UK National Confidential Inquiry into Periodic Depth report. In 1999, it said that although fluid and electrolytes were the most often prescribed drug in hospital practice, this was often done very badly by the most junior member of the team, but little or no training or knowledge on the subject. And they also found that a significant number of patients were dying as the result of inappropriate fluid management. And one of the recommendations of the report was that fluid management should be given the same status as drug prescription. And in the UK, we all prescribe fluids on the drug card. But the difference between fluids and a drug is that if you prescribe the wrong dose of a drug, the pharmacist will be on the phone straight away and bang your head against the wall. But if you prescribe 1,200 millimoles of sodium, no one will even bat an eyelid. And the second paper that caught my attention was a reprint from 1937, where Isidore Rabden's group from the US rendered a group of dogs hyperproteinemic by a combination of a low-protein diet, plasmapheresis, and saline overload. And they found that when those dogs became hyperproteinemic, their gastric emptying time increased. So these two papers actually led to a whole series of work. And I'd just like to remind you a little bit of normal physiology and that body water It's about 60% of body weight, and 2/3 of this is the intracellular compartment, and the remaining 1/3 is in the extracellular fluid compartment, of which there's about 5% in the plasma volume and the rest in the interstitial space. Now, solutions like colloids are mainly distributed in the intravascular volume, so theoretically, the ability to expand the plasma volume is 100%. But in practice, this could be anywhere between 50 and 70%. Crystalloids like 0.9% saline and Ringer's lactate are distributed throughout the extracellular water, and only about 20% stays in the intravascular compartment. And solutions like 5% dextrose and dextrose saline are merely vehicles to deliver free water, and they distribute throughout the total body water. So although they're good solutions for maintenance, they're completely useless for resuscitation or replacement. And we come to the three main reasons why we may give our patients IV fluids. The first is resuscitation, where you want to fill the intravascular compartment, restore blood volume or plasma volume, and cardiac output and tissue oxygen delivery. The next is replacement. A typical example for this is a patient with an enterocutaneous fistula where they're losing fluid and electrolytes. And for this, you need to give the maintenance requirement and like for like what has been lost from the fistula. And most patients who are in equilibrium with themselves and cannot eat or drink require maintenance requirements, which is much less than we think it to be. And main aim of fluid therapy is to get over that initial insult to the gastrointestinal tract. The patient can maintain oral nutrition and oral fluid intake and get back to homeostasis. But we must realize that there's a dynamic relationship between these three indications. And a patient can move from one to the other very rapidly. So for instance, if you get a patient with multi-system trauma, you resuscitate that patient, take the patient to theater, stem the bleeding, that patient should move over into maintenance requirement. On the other hand, if you've done a straightforward operation, that patient should be in maintenance requirement. But if they bleed, then they move over to resuscitation requirements and even need to go back to theater. So we'll now talk about 0.9% saline, or as I said earlier, I prefer to call it abnormal saline. And it's quite interesting when you look at the history of it, because I tried to find out about the origins of 0.9% saline, and we look at some of the articles. Most of them believe that 0.9% saline came into being during the 1932 cholera epidemic that spread across northeast England. However, if you look at the work of Thomas Latta, William O'Shaughnessy, and Egerton Jennings, you find that the solution that they used then bore no resemblance to 0.9% saline. In fact, Latta's third and fourth solutions bore closer resemblance to Ringer's lactate than to 0.9% saline. And the origin of the word normal saline comes from the work of Hamburger, who was a clinical chemist working in the Netherlands. And he was doing erythrocyte fragility experiments, and every day he would come and dip the erythrocytes at various concentrations of saline. And he found that the erythrocytes were most stable at 0.92% saline. So he called this indifferent saline, meaning that it had no effect on the erythrocyte. But somehow over the years, it got corrupted to normal or even physiological saline. And a few years earlier, Sidney Ringer, who was a physiologist in London, was doing frog heart beating experiments. And he would come and dip the frog heart into the saline solution and found that it stopped beating in a few minutes. And one day he came into the same thing, the heart continued to beat for a long period of time. So he called his lab tech and asked him how he had prepared the solution. The lab tech said, "I'm terribly sorry, but I didn't use distilled water, I used tap water provided by the New River Water Company." And then Ringer analyzed the water and found that there was a bit of calcium, a bit of potassium, some bicarbonate, and that's how Ringer's solution came into being. And then Alexis Hartman, who was a pediatrician in the US, modified the solution very slightly about 40 years later and used it to successfully resuscitate children with diarrhea. And interestingly, Ringer was British, Hartman was American, but the British call it Hartman's solution, and the Americans call it Ringer's. But the problems with 0.9% saline were recognized as early as 1911, when Evans commented on the recklessness with which surgeons prescribed this solution. I'm afraid the recklessness even persists today. These are two cases from my very own hospital, where this teenager came with a spontaneously ruptured spleen. No one recognized that it was hypovolemic. They kept giving him saline. By the time the surgeon was called, he had received 10 liters of saline and was brain dead. And this baby was supposed to be given a 5 ml flush of saline to keep the vent flap patent. Someone by accident gave the baby 50 ml of saline, and the child died. So you've got to be careful whenever you prescribe these fluids or drugs. So our work started with some experiments on medical students. We call them healthy volunteers, but I'm not sure that's strictly true. And we did a double-blind randomized crossover study where on one occasion we gave them 0.9% saline, which is shown in the solid line. On the other occasion, we gave them Hartmann solution, which is shown in the hatched line. Now here you can see that change in body weight is a good measure of fluid balance. But they all gained weight by about 2 kilos at the end of the experiment. But those given Hartmann's excreted that fluid much more quickly than those given saline. And these changes in albumin, hematocrit, and hemoglobin just reflect dilution and reversal of the same. And then we looked at the chloride concentration. We found that even in healthy volunteers, when they're given 2 liters of 0.9% saline, they developed a sustained hyperchloremia that lasted more than 6 hours. Whereas those given the balanced crystalloid had a normal chloride concentration all through the experiment. Then we looked at the strong iron difference, and there's a greater fall in the strong iron difference with those given saline. And if you understand the Stewart's hypothesis, this means that those who are given saline develop a hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, and this is bad. So those given Hartmann's passed urine almost straight after the infusion, whereas those given saline passed urine 3 hours after completion of the experiment. The urine volume was twice as high as those given Hartmann's as compared to saline, and the sodium excretion again was greater with Hartmann's than with saline. And further work that we did showed that the excretion of a sodium load or a sodium and chloride load is dependent on a slow and sustained release of the renin, angiotensin, and aldosterone system. And this is a relatively inefficient mechanism. Because all through evolution, we've developed mechanisms to try and hold on to salt and water in order to preserve intravascular volume and circulation. But we've only been exposed to an overdose of salt and water in recent years because of therapeutics, and so our bodies have not yet evolved to get rid of that fluid. And this animal experiment showed that if you dipped a renal artery in solutions of varying concentrations of chloride, you got a vasoconstriction and it reached the pathological range of greater than 110. There was very severe vasoconstriction. And some sheep studies have shown this also led to a decrease in renal blood flow and glomerular filtration rate. So we use the same model that we developed before to look at this using MRI on renal function. Again, we showed that those given saline developed a sustained hyperchloremia and a fall in the strong iron difference. Then we measured renal volume using MRI. We found there was a greater increase in renal volume after saline than after the balanced crystalloid. This was not statistically different, but you've got to remember that the kidney is a relatively small organ encompassed in a capsule. And when you get tissue edema, the stretch of the capsule, and you get an intra-organ hypertension, which leads to a decrease in renal blood flow. And this was true because when we measured renal blood artery flow velocity, we found a significant fall after saline and remained around baseline after the balanced crystalloid. Again, there was a significant fall in renal cortical tissue perfusion after saline. So we came up with this hypothesis that when you have a hypochloremia, all that chloride is filtered to the glomerulus, it goes to the proximal tubule where there is no reabsorption of that chloride. It finally reaches the distal tubule where again there is no reabsorption. But then it crosses into the macula densa and depolarizes the basement membrane and releases adenosine. Now, adenosine in the heart is a very potent vasodilator, but in the kidney it acts on the A1 receptor and causes vasoconstriction. And this results in a decrease in renal blood flow, a decrease in glomerular filtration rate, and also a decrease in urinary volume and urinary sodium excretion. And the first randomized controlled trial comparing saline with ringers in perioperative care did this on patients having renal transplantation. And this was a double-blind study and was stopped by the data monitoring committee halfway through because they found that one group was getting hyperkalemia. And they said ringers contains potassium, so it must be the ringers group and you're doing harm to the patients. So they broke the code and analyzed the data, and they found that the hyperkalemia was seen in the saline group. They developed an acidosis, and also there was impairment in renal function in the saline group when compared to the ringers group. Then Andrew Shaw and co-workers from Duke University did this propensity match study where they looked at patients having surgery and those who received exclusively saline on the day of the operation versus those who received exclusively a balanced crystalloid. And they found that there was a tendency for those who received the balanced crystalloid to fare much better. And when they looked at the composite endpoint, this was significant in favor of the balanced crystalloid. And then they looked at resource utilization, and there was a greater need to use buffers in those receiving saline, a greater need for blood transfusion, a greater amount of lactic acidosis, and 5 times the number of patients who received saline needed renal replacement therapy when compared with those who received balanced crystalloid. And these trends were also shown in the critical care situation. This is a sequential cohort study from Australia, where in the first cohort they gave patients high chloride containing solutions, and the stay in ICU, each patient received an average of about 700 millimoles of chloride, whereas in the second cohort they received low chloride solutions and patients received around 500 millimoles of chloride. And when they did the analysis, they found that both the incidence of acute kidney injury and the need for renal replacement therapy was significantly less in those in the low chloride group than in the high chloride group. And Stuart McCluskey from Toronto again has shown the same thing in surgical patients. If patients develop a hyperchloremia post-operatively, they're more likely to develop complications and more likely to stay in hospital longer than if they do not develop hyperchloremia. So besides the effect on the kidney, high chloride concentration do produce a hyperchloremic acidosis, and there is an increased need for buffers to correct this acidosis. There's possible damage to the endothelial glycocalyx with increased interstitial fluid volume leading to edema. Gastrointestinal edema leads to intestinal stretch, and this can lead to a post-operative itis and also impaired anastomotic healing, and you can get increased anastomotic dehiscence after surgery. There is an increase in intraoperative blood loss and a greater need for blood product transfusion. And the important clinical outcome, which most of us are concerned with, so there's an increase in post-operative complications, a higher mortality, and perhaps a higher incidence of acute kidney injury and the need for renal replacement therapy. And then we get this trial from Australia, the SPLIT trial, which looked at critically ill patients, and they randomized them to receive either 0.9% saline or balanced crystalloid. And if you look over here, you don't need to be a statistician to see that all these lines overlap, and that this was a negative study where they didn't show any difference between the two groups. However, to understand this study, you've got to read the supplementary document. And that, again, is very important. When you read a paper, especially if it's a prestigious journal, just don't go by the abstract. Read the entire paper and then go to the supplementary document, because the real data are hidden over there. And 940 patients were not eligible because they did not need IV fluids on the ICU and have never been to an ICU where patients were not receiving IV fluids. The authors did not report the serum chloride data, and the total volume of fluids that patients received, not in a day, but in the entire stay in ICU, was 2 liters. So these are not sick patients. And I've, again, not seen a patient in ICU who received less than 3.5 liters in a day. So these patients did not get the high chloride load, and therefore this was a negative study. And then there are these 2 studies from North America, the SALTED trial and the SMART trial. The SALTED trial looked at saline versus balanced crystalloid in those who were not critically ill. Again, they showed that the incidence of adverse kidney events over 30 days was significantly greater in the saline group than in the balanced crystalloid group. Again, the SMART trial looked at patients who went to critical care areas after resuscitation in A&E, and they found that, again, the incidence of acute kidney injury was greater in the saline group, and those in the balanced crystalloid group spent more days without renal replacement therapy than those in the saline group. So what is the hyperchloremic threshold? This is some data which we have just analyzed and not yet, which shows that threshold is probably 108 millimoles of sodium, of chloride per liter, because then you start getting the adverse effects in the kidney. Whereas if the chloride goes up from 105 to 106, it probably makes no difference at all. And now we're coming to the last part of my lecture, which is to emphasize the importance of near-zero fluid balance. And how many of you recognize him? Shout his name out.
This is
It's Andy Warhol. But why did Andy Warhol feature in a talk like this? Well, he had 4 bullets put through his chest. He went to hospital, they operated on him, and he survived. And then a few years later, he went to have an open cholecystectomy. And they overloaded him with fluid, and he died of congestive cardiac failure. So I'd just like to remind you of the daily maintenance requirements of salt and water. And most people require between 25 and 30 mils of water per kg per day. which for the average person is between 1.75 and 2.25 liters per day. The sodium requirement is very much the same as the potassium requirement, it's about 70 millimoles per day. And we need about 400 calories, not for nutritional purposes, but mainly to prevent starvation and ketosis. So if you take 2 to 2.5 liters of dextrose and add potassium to it, you would be providing the daily requirement. However, a lot of patients receive far in excess of 2.5 liters of dextrose, and then they go on to develop hyponatremia, which is dangerous. If the patient needs more than 2.5 liters, that patient is probably not in maintenance requirement and is moved on to resuscitation or even replacement requirement. And if you forget these rules, you often end up in a situation like this. So this is a real fluid balance chart from a patient who had major abdominal surgery without what I call audible bleeding. And in the first 24 hours, this patient will receive 8 liters of fluid and 1,200 millimoles of sodium. He's produced 600 millimoles of nitrogen through catabolic processes, and the net solute load is 3,500 milliosmoles. He's put out a liter of urine, and if you're generous, a liter of insensible losses, hardly any solute. And so, in the first 24 hours, this patient has reached a state of 6 liters positive fluid balance and 3,000 milliosmole of positive solute balance. And if you assume at this time of the recovery process, the average concentrating capacity of the kidney is around 500 milliosmoles per liter, this patient needs to produce 6 liters of urine to excrete the solute load. And this is physically impossible in the early post-op period, and the patient develops edema, and edema is bad for surgical recovery. We're equally guilty of dehydrating our patients and sending them to the operating room in a state of fluid depletion. And most anesthetic societies now recommend that patients should eat for 6 hours before an operation and drink clear fluids for up to 2 hours before an operation. However, still patients are starving for 12 or even 24 hours before an operation. And if you fast the patient overnight and prevent them from drinking, they reach the operating room with a urinary osmolality of greater than 800, and this is indicative of dehydration. Whereas if you let them drink for 2 hours before the operation, the urinary osmolality is a more manageable 500, and these patients are in a state of euvolemia. Similarly, if you give them bowel preparation for colonic surgery, they lose about 1 liter to 2 liters of total body water, and they go to the operating room in a state of fluid deficit. And when the anesthetists are faced with a patient with fluid deficit, they've got infused boluses of fluid even before the anesthetic starts, and so we get into this vicious cycle of fluid overload. So looking at the Rabden paper, we devised a physiological experiment where we took a group of patients having straightforward colonic surgery without expected bleeding and randomized them to receive either 3 liters of water and 154 millimoles of sodium per day, and that was the standard group, and the restricted group received no more than 2 liters of water and 7 millimoles or 75 millimoles of sodium per day. And all through this experiment, those in the standard group received far greater quantities of both water and sodium than those in the restricted group. There was no significant difference in 24-hour urinary output or 24-hour urinary sodium excretion. However, if you assume that the weight of the tissue resected was about 1 kilo, you find that those in the standard group were 3 liters positive fluid balance state, whereas those in the restricted group were a state of 0 or near 0 fluid balance. And when we measured gastric emptying time using radionuclide scintigraphy on the 4th postoperative day, we found that both solid phase and liquid phase gastric emptying time was significantly more prolonged in the standard group than in the restricted group. And this is the first paper in humans to show that actually acute salt and water overload may be a cause of acute gastrointestinal failure. And as expected, those in the standard group stayed in hospital 3 days longer than those in the restricted group. Then Brandstrup and colleagues did a bigger study in Denmark, similar principles, and a much more complicated fluid infusion regimen. But to simplify matters, those in the restricted group got fluids to maintain a constant body weight, whereas those in the standard group got fluids to increase their body weight by between 3 and 7 kilos. And they found that complications were about twice as common in the standard group than in the restricted group. And more interestingly, when they broke it down according to the amount of fluid patients received, the results were quite startling. So if they received less than 3.5 liters on the day of the operation, the complication rate was in the range of 20%. But if they got more than 5.5 liters on the day of the operation, the complication rate was in the range of 60%. Similarly, if patients were maintained in a state of near 0 fluid balance and gained less than half a kilo, the complication rate was much lower than if they gained more than 2.5 kilos. So far, so good. Standard, bad, restricted, good. And then we come across a study from Glasgow, which again uses very similar principles. They have a standard group and a restricted group. The standard group received 2.75 liters, the restricted group 2 liters. And this difference of 750 mils was statistically significant. But you've got to ask yourself the question, was it clinically relevant? And the answer to this is no, because you see the weight change was minimal, about a kilo weight gain and a kilo weight loss in the two groups. And when they looked at all the endpoints, there was absolutely no difference in outcome. And the study from the Netherlands, again, used the same concept, but here the standard group probably got the right amount of fluid, whereas those in the restricted group got too little. And therefore, the standard group here fared better than the restricted group. So having started this confusion, we decided to resolve the matter as to what's good, standard, liberal, restricted. So we looked at all the randomized controlled trials published at that time and reclassified them according to the amount of fluid patients actually received. And here you can see these received too little, these received too much, and these received the right amount. And fluids are drugs, and as with any drug, there's a dose-related response. You increase the dose, you get a good response, and you reach a plateau. And finally, when you give too much of a good thing, you start getting complications and adverse events. So in the first forest plot, you see that we use the author's definitions of restricted versus standard or liberal, and we found there was absolutely no difference in the rate of complications. However, when you turn this on its head and use the concept of a state of fluid balance versus a state of fluid imbalance, you find that those who were maintained in a state of fluid balance had about a 41% reduction in the risk of developing complications when compared to those who were maintained in a state of fluid imbalance. Similarly, when you look at length of stay, author's definitions, no difference, balance versus imbalance, 3.5-day reduction in hospital stay. And this has been proven by a number of other cohort studies. Well, this is a study from America, which looked at patients who had abdominal trauma and exclusively colonic injuries, and they had colonic resection and anastomosis. And this study found that if patients who developed anastomotic dehiscence had far greater quantities of fluid in the first, second, and third postoperative days. And when they did a regression analysis, they found that the total fluid load of the first 72 hours was in excess of 10.5 liters. Patients were more likely to develop anastomotic dehiscence. So again, an American study which divided patients in tertiles according to the amount of fluids they received. And if they received too little or too much fluid, complication rates and length of stay and cost of treatment were much higher than if they received the right amount of fluid. And this is another very similar study, which is using tertiles to use quintiles. Again, too little fluid or too much fluid causes problems. So how much is too much? And looking at the animal literature and the human literature, we've come to the conclusion that a small amount of fluid overload probably doesn't make a difference. But once patients start gaining about 2.5 to 3 kilos in body weight, indicative of a fluid retention of more than 2.5 to 3 liters, they start developing edema, and then they start having complications. And then we get the study which was published in New England last year, again from Australia, which had a liberal fluid group and a restricted fluid group in the periodical period. And they found that there was no difference in outcome apart from the fact that those in the restricted group had a greater need for renal replacement therapy. However, again, you've got to look at the data very carefully. And here, patients in the liberal group got about 6 liters on the day of the operation of the first postoperative day, and those in the standard group in the restricted group got about 3.5 liters. However, the mean fluid balance difference was much less. And when you look at weight gain, these are gained about 1.6 kilos, and these are gained only 0.3 kilos. So again, there's no great difference in weight change, and they haven't reached that threshold of 2.5 kilos or 3 kilos that I told you earlier about. And so there was no difference in the primary endpoint. And so Australians being Australians looked for secondary endpoints then, and they found that there was an increase in the rate of acute kidney injury and an increase in the rate of the need for renal replacement therapy. But there are some problems with this study. First of all, they used a balanced crystalloid and not 0.9% saline, and we know that balanced crystalloids do not cause as much fluid overload as 0.9% saline. They only looked at the intraoperative and first postoperative day fluid therapy. Weight gain and positive fluid balance was minimal, as I've shown you. There was no record of fasting over fluids, how they prepared the patients preoperatively for the anesthetic room. So all this study shows that a modestly liberal administration of balanced salt solutions does not create substantial fluid retention. And both hypovolemia and oliguria must be recognized and treated with fluid. We cannot let our patients go on being oliguria for a prolonged period of time without treating them. And to understand this better, we've got to look at the study from Southampton, which looked at patients who developed edema in the postoperative period. This study is really interesting because they found that patients largely received the same amount of fluid, but one group developed edema and the other didn't. And so there is a propensity for some patients to develop edema, and if they develop edema, they have a higher complication rate and greater length of hospital stay. We must, however, remember that sometimes salt and water overload is the inevitable consequence of the resuscitation process. And they've shown that if you resuscitate a septic patient in ICU, they gain about 12.5 liters in total body water over the first 48 hours. And it takes about 3 weeks to get rid of this fluid overload that they've acquired in the first 48 hours. And these are two pictures of the very same patient. Over here, she looks in a Kwashiorkor-like state, and here she's in a marasmus-like state, but there's no change in a fat mass or a fat-free mass. It's mainly that she's got rid of the fluid that she's accumulated. And we've shown that as you get rid of this fluid overload, you lose your body weight by up to 10 kilos, or even more sometimes. And then for every kilo body weight you lose, the serum albumin goes up by about 1 gram per liter. And this is not an indicator of an increase in albumin production. It just shows a reversal of dilution and redistribution of the albumin. So there is a fairly narrow range of fluid therapy, and we should try and maintain patients as close to normal bulimia as possible, because both fluid deficits and fluid overload cause similar problems at the molecular level. And if our patients have got to get well quickly, we've got to make sure that they're eating and drinking as soon as they can, because the gut along with the kidney is the best regulator of fluid balance. So we must remember that when we look at fluid therapy, we not only have to look at volume, but we've also got to look at content and try our best not to overload our patients. So what have we achieved over the years? Well, we published a lot of papers, people have read the paper, they've cited them, but I think what I'm really proud of is that we managed to get a group of people together and we wrote the Gift to Sub guidelines for the UK, which was very well received. And then the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence got hold of us and we formed the guideline development group and we wrote the NICE guidelines. And these have had a major impact on fluid therapy in the UK and in Europe. And we also wrote this book for medical students and junior doctors, which was very well received. So our work went towards the 2014 Research Excellence Framework for the societal impact of work, reduction in complications, saving healthcare costs. We awarded the Knowledge Exchange and Innovation Award by the University of Nottingham, and the book we wrote was highly commended by the BMA Book of the Year Committee. So what have I gained over the last 20 years? Well, I'm very privileged to have helped change practice in my own lifetime. And I've not done this on my own, we've done it with other researchers with similar minds. And we got together and we showed that you could produce similar results all over the world, and people started paying attention to that. I've had international recognition. I'm an acknowledged expert, which means, as I said earlier, that I know very little about anything, and mostly nothing about everything. We've written the NICE guidelines, we've written other international guidelines. I really enjoyed my work. I've got a lot of air miles that I don't have time to use. And I've also got involved in surgical politics in various societies, and we help change the landscape. John has spoken of some of the awards I've had, and I'm not going to waste time on that. But I've also got some regrets, and probably I've spent too much time at work. I've spent more time with the family, perhaps more interaction with medical students, and taught them a bit better. I could have a greater grant income, done large-scale clinical trials, I could have done less clinical work, so I had fewer complications, fewer complaints, and less mortality. But I always wanted to be a practicing surgeon, and I didn't want the reputation of a non-operating professor of surgery, so I maintained my clinical practice. Even today, I do the same amount of clinical work as my non-academic colleagues. And perhaps I could have fought my corner a bit better, but then life is short and you don't have to get into unnecessary conflicts. So the future of academic surgery is currently secure, but there are a lot of threats from all over. The main thing being money and the pressures on the academic surgeon exerted upon by the university and by the hospital. And I'd just like to remind you that although I've enjoyed my career in academic surgery, surgery. It's not for everyone. Only if you're inclined, you can do good to patients, but there are a number of other things. Choose your institution and mentor very carefully. Hard work is rewarded, but failures bring you back to earth. And if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. Always try to be a good clinician and reinvent yourself as your career progresses. You don't want to be the same thing for 30 years. Build a good team and keep your research clinically relevant. And the cartoon below will explain why I don't wear laced shoes. I have enjoyed my career, and I probably wouldn't have done anything else if I was given a chance to start again. But surgery is a very humbling discipline, and we all have complications, and that brings us back to earth. And you've got to reflect on that from time to time and go and think how you treat your patient better. At the same time, you've got to get over that and treat the next patient to the best of your ability. And this is a quotation from Lariche, who described the Lariche syndrome that many of you will be aware of as a vascular surgeon. I think it resonates with a lot of us. And finally, I would like to thank all those who have given us funding to all the work that we've done over the years. This work has not been done by me alone, but we have a large group of patients. And a professor of surgery was once asked, you do all this work, and who does the work when you're away? So he said, it's the same people who do it when I'm there. And this is the group of my clinical colleagues, and I will be here next week to you. They are the ones looking after my post-op patients. And finally, my family, they've always been there. They've grown up. We've got 3 Cambridge graduates now in the family, and we're very pleased. And I would like to thank them for all the support. And finally, I'm not going to say anything about this, but this is my favorite painting. It's by Picasso and hangs at the Picasso Museum in Barcelona. And it's entitled Science and Charity. Look at it and make up your mind as to what it says to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was wonderful, I must say. That was awesome. Your own odyssey, surgical odyssey, and the fluid balance odyssey, I must say. Now I request Dr. George D'Souza to come over here and to present the plaque to Dr. Gabriel. To please a small gift on behalf of the Alumni Association. Thank you. Now I request of Maya to give the vote of thanks.
Dilip's asking for questions. Usually in the narration, we don't allow, but are there any burning questions? Yeah. Yes, sir. Just stop it. Press the, yeah. Are you ready, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll be able to answer them.
My name is Smita. Just with regards to the study of the liberal and the vestibular surgery drive from Australia. So would you still say that you believe in the restricted sort of fluid management?
No, I think we've got to get the terminology right now. I think use liberal, restricted. It's very confusing. One man's restricted, another man's liberal. So what we've got to say, we've got to avoid salt and water overload. And one of the reasons why the Australian trial showed that is because they didn't use 0.9% saline. And given the patient 6 liters of 0.9% saline, I'm sure they were showing problems. So Ringer's lactate or Hartman's solution is executed much more quickly than 0.9% saline. And so you have fewer complications. So that's what my last slide said. You've not only got to look at volume, you've got to look at content as well.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Okay. Being the daughter of a surgeon, I know my dad didn't look at any research like this. His research only had a scalpel in one hand. That's what my image of surgeons were, but I think it's quite interesting to see how much research Dilip has gone into in spite of being, not in spite, while being a surgeon. And that's probably an eye-opener for many of you over here too. And the findings was certainly an eye-opener for me in terms of the fluid overload. We don't think so much about it, especially even if you're a surgeon or a physician. And IV fluids being used so indiscriminately today. And the epidemic of dengue is being used even more indiscriminately. Forget about doing surgery. So thank you very much, Dilip. It's a dream come true, I think, for you and for us to have you here on Duration. And I would also like to thank Omar and John Stephen for introducing both the speaker and Jayashree, and Dr. George for presenting the plaque. Thank you all. I'm sure you all learned something today. A very, very big thanks to the 1968 batch for being here with us. It's a golden jubilee celebrations, and today we are celebrating 9 different batches jubilees, 3 golden jubilee, 3 UG silver jubilees, and 3 postgraduate silver jubilees. So it's quite an exciting day for the jubilaries. They've been at it from morning, so we've still got a long way to go until the evening. We have tea for you to refresh yourselves, and I would like the journalists to come back here for a very quick AGM after that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. N.J. Thomas and Dr. Maya for being here with us. We have Tangam and Dr. Rajni again. Where is Dr. Rajni? Oh, there. Yeah. And we're very happy to have you. I didn't know.